Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Californium. So we made it in the second episode to the second reality, which is a much more totalitarian version of a uh, California state. Uh, at some level, maybe California isn't just the California you would think of in the real world. California may very well have taken over the entire United States, and it may very well be a case that all of the mainland United States or all of the 50 states are considered California. We would have to really see a map to figure that out. In the first reality, we were a drugged out, alcoholic, failed sci-fi writer. In the second reality, we are a somewhat well-respected, patriotic historical writer, perhaps historical fiction writer who writes about Abraham Lincoln. But in the first reality, our wife left us after the death of our daughter. In the second reality, no mention of the death of our daughter Alice, and instead our wife has been arrested and is soon to be executed as being a terrorist. So in most games you would think maybe there's something you're supposed to do here to save your wife in this reality, but I think honestly I'm just going to experience it, talk to a few more people, and then get back to just finding the hidden object symbols and moving towards a third reality. Like, see what this guy says.
The store is closed, Patriot. A good citizen informed us that Mr. Sapna was selling deviant music. He's ripe for psycho-realignment, that one. If it were up to me, I'd eliminate that damn curry eater.
There's a lot of cussing, a lot of hate and spite in the words that are being spoken by the agents and people in general in this world. This is a world that also seems to be based on electricity, and the focus around California doesn't fully make a lot of sense as far as a focus around electricity, unless maybe Texas is still part of Mexico, and Mexico therefore has a lot of oil, and to become more independent they focused on electricity and generating electricity some other way. Although I'm not sure if that fully explains it. Tesla maybe plays a bigger role too. It's funny, this is Tome 1, Wheeled World Publishing, The Great Ape by Elvin Green, that's me. And then Tome 2, exact same picture basically. And then Tome 3. Weirdly, he's not with his hat, his trademark hat. See, the problem though with this is that I may talk to somebody and then it may move it forward and I may miss the conversation with some other people.
Elvin, Patriot writer. Thea arrested? What a shock. But no smoke without fire, as they say. It'll be a public trial. You'll be everywhere. Radio, TV, Patriot writer Green testifying against Thea Trauberg. The nation before love. The ultimate sacrifice in the name of the Republic. You know I've always been there for you. So I'll give you a word of advice. Collaborate. Anyhow, they're gonna eliminate your Thea, that's for sure. So don't let whatever happens cause any problems for us. I mean, you. It's gonna be war, you know. We have to keep a low profile if we don't want any trouble. Maybe you could even write a book about the trial. Who knows? I can already see the title. The Republic Before Love. The Memoirs of Dear Patriot Writer Elvin Green.
So yeah, everybody instantly sides against Thea for out of fear, if no other reason. Okay, well, we see one here. So, let's go ahead and click that. Now it'll start showing us this new red universe that feels like it's a much more sci-fi futuristic world. But I really don't want to solve any of these puzzles until I've talked to everybody. And I think I've potentially missed some conversations already because I think I talked to this guy.
Green, are you going to join the battalions of our glorious Californian army? Our republic needs warriors, not writers.
Let's see what this
The prosecutor general is waiting for you in his office. He's rather handsome, if you ask me. Power makes people sexy, don't you think? Too bad he's married to his job.
So this opens another area open for us to investigate. So the world's getting bigger, but I don't know if I really love that thought. It looks like you're gonna straight up just take an elevator at some point. Notice how the game takes control of the camera to make sure you are looking at what it's trying to show you. Which honestly, that's a good move considering how often in games that doesn't happen, and then something happens and you're just expected to recognize that something has changed. Obviously nobody else is seeing this because they're not reacting to it in any way. This is a messy environment. I feel like I probably have missed a couple conversations, and I'd really hate to find out that they were important conversations or that they are achievement based conversations that you have to have with everybody. Now you can see the whole sign swapping magically, and this is MMC. We'll have to figure out what that stands for. Patriotism means no questions. Interesting. If you see something, say something. It's all very much hitting the nail on the head. It's all very positive, obvious stuff.
The ultraphonic recordings are categorical. Thea Trauberg, born on December 16th, 119 AL. 5 feet
after
5,
Lincoln.
black hair, black eyes, is guilty of subversive un-Californian activities and deviant behavior. Article 5 of the California Act stipulates the maximum sentence for treason, so I'll be delighted to request the deletion of this scum. Of course, the Republic is counting on your testimony, Green. Prove you deserve the title of Patriot.
Okay, yeah, we're really not getting a lot from talking to these people, though. It kind of sucks. And interesting, there's just like a thing floating in the air. It's all very trippy. You can't click on something until it lights up and shows you the symbol. And to see the symbol, you have to figure out what interaction is doing what. And the sphere of influence is continuously opening up sections, but I'm not sure we have seen a single instance where opening up a section in one reality actually reveals anything in that reality. If anything, it really just feels like it is a tease of what is to come once you reach the next reality. Yeah, and you're just, I guess, looking for the lighting to appear. So try to keep the camera somewhat in the middle of an area, and then keep an eye on to see if any of the lighting changes as you walk around.
Citizens of California, let us create a better world by uniting to fight foul subversion.
So, yeah. You also run into a major problem here in that I've actively chosen to not do any of the puzzles when I first found them, so potentially I'm gonna have to wander around. We hear the radio stuff, and I feel like this TV wasn't here originally. It feels a little slow to react, by the way, when you click on things. Here everything seems to be backwards. Earth in our minds, Mars in our hearts. And a Lincoln robot. Interesting. So if I could have found this puzzle earlier, then I wonder if that means that this is the first one we should have done. Although you kind of have this weird situation where this new reality feels like it's going to be on Mars instead of Earth, and if you had been able to change the world too quickly, then you wouldn't have at least done that first lap around the world as it is. It needs to basically have some gatekeeping as a way of telling the story, in that you have to talk to everybody and move the story forward before you can do the puzzles. And potentially you would even have the narrator, or the main protagonist, indicate that you have decided you want to leave this world and visit another. Okay, we saw the light blinking. Seems like you have to be at a very specific distance there. None of this indicates that Alice ever existed, though. And so there might be some backstory to that, I suppose. It might be that in this blue-colored world, you are required to get permission to have children, and it's strictly regulated and controlled, and maybe in this world you weren't given permission. Seems like the trick here is you've got to move the mouse around fairly quickly to get to that. And the mouse needed to hover over.
Do you suffer from existential instability, Elvin? I may call you Elvin, may I not? After all, we're like close friends now. You used to have no future, but here you are with a present. However, this world does not suit you, and you're attempting to peel back the layers of reality.
And see, in this case, it wouldn't really make sense for the camera to take control and have you look at the TV without walking you directly to the TV, which then would just mean you'd have to walk away from the TV again. And yes, if I can twist my fingers to press the shift key and the W key at the same time, I can run, but that is difficult for me, at least, as I'm not used to WASD, and I definitely am not used to WASD and a mouse at the same time. This one I think is straight up just timed. One of the things that I feel like Myst does, and I use Myst as a reference perhaps far too often, but in their different ages, in the different worlds in Myst, there's no real attempt to make it connected or the same world or even a similar layout, and that in part helps them create very distinctively different looking worlds versus something like this, which can only do skins on the same layout, which are not particularly that interesting. On the whole, these three different worlds start to get interesting, but each little section is fairly boring. There's not anything really special there that's being revealed. There's not a single statue of a person or a single book or a single object of any sort that could have you potentially stare at something for a few seconds. You would think it would be more of these like posters, because at least these posters are establishing something logical as to how the world is and how it's designed. Yeah. But yeah, a billy club here, or a nightstick, whatever you would call that, doesn't mean too much to me. You'd think maybe the whole world needs to be shifted in larger groups, but even shifting the whole world all the way mostly gives you a lot of repeated visuals, a lot of repeated low polygon 3D models. This is again a prime example of potentially a asset store.
I feel I must warn you, Elvin. Entering into the labyrinth of times gone by is a risky undertaking. You never know what the past may have in store for you.
This is funny, it's saying I'm going in the past. I would think I was going into the future. Anyways, my point here is you when you have asset stores and people just making a generic wine bottle and then it can be purchased cheaply and you haven't put any artistic integrity into it yourself to the point where you really don't have to be proud of it, and thus you want to place it sparingly so it doesn't become repetitive, and you want to place it prominently so when you look at it, it would be interesting to look at and add actual value to the total composition of the game. When you don't have those motivators because you just paid what, $1, $20 for a wine bottle model, then you just don't really have that care, and then all of a sudden you just have wine bottle after wine bottle after wine bottle, and there's just no reason for that. Like, one wine bottle on the table would be more than enough. It's also an incredibly weird way, I would say, to run a bar, to have entire bottles sitting on the surface without anybody billing for it or in any way slowing down the amount of alcohol you would consume. Wait, hearing the heartbeat again. I don't think we're quite to the point, though, where we've done everything. Does this glow tell me that there's more to do here? Yes. Okay. So it would be my assumption that there's something more here. This path was blocked off before. And this green plant kind of stands out. It may very well just be a case where there should just be less 3D models in games overall, in favor of things always being interesting when you look at it, and it's a unique, bespoke, artistic creation. Although I imagine game developers would never actually decide to go that route. And inherently for a game like this, the asset flipping of low polygon models doesn't really affect that much, because you still have the problem of the game itself not being much of anything. So clearly this part is lit up, but I really can't get over on this side. Plus this part has already been interacted with. Which, if anything, it makes me feel like there's something here I should do. It's spinning.
What's wrong?
There it is. Just have to find the right side.
So you insist on breaking up this world where everyone has his place, even you. I almost envy you humans with your irrepressible sense of hope. I find the notion so utterly bizarre. As my literary alter ego said, "Young man, you aim to be such an unusual young man, imbued with pure love and scorn for gold."
So maybe we get a little bit of a hint there that this is some kind of artificial intelligence. Now that's interesting. That felt like that was just straight up a visual glitch. And that's a real problem here too, is if you're gonna make a game based on visuals, the possibility of having visual glitches that are unintentional has to be brought down to an almost zero state. You cannot have the player looking at clipping in elements. So this is obviously something different. The tree gets taller and shorter based on how close you are to it. In a funny way, this is almost like the game The Witness, except for it makes the fatal flaw that The Witness figured out to avoid, which is, in The Witness there is a very distinct, specific way in which things are depicted, and you learn that system and you stick to that system throughout the entirety of the game. You don't have a randomly different system in which you're discovering that there are visual puzzles. Trying not to spoil it too much, but yeah, this is doing the exact opposite, where there is a consistent system in that you're looking for symbols and you're clicking on symbols, but how to find the symbols changes every time.
You don't talk much, do you, Elvin, my boy? Wouldn't you like to know who is the gatekeeper of these infinite worlds? Am I the grace of God, or some form of artificial intelligence? A psychological experiment in which you're the guinea pig? Am I the manifestation of a temporal epileptic fit affecting your brain? Unfortunately, even I don't know. I simply deliver my reports. But I am neither your tutor nor your nanny. I am not your Virgil, and you are certainly not Dante. And we are definitely not in paradise.
So I suspected he was an AI. I suspected that I was being psychologically experimented on. I did not think of the idea of him being a grace of God, magical element, because yeah, that just didn't occur to me as a possibility. I think we're done here, and so now it is all about lining up the angles again, which going inside and having the music change probably means I'm not supposed to be up here. The occasional heartbeat and the visual glitches and everything all makes the game feel a little trippy, like intentionally obviously, but yeah, I'm not sure that you couldn't have done a little bit more if you were trying to make a game where somebody was tripping on drugs. Like, you can go fairly trippy yet comprehensible with something like American McGee's Alice or Alice Madness Returns, the sequel. There's one more. Interesting. Or there's many games on Steam where it is just completely incomprehensible and it is a random assortment of visuals and audio and stuff like that, and I don't really enjoy those type of games or presentations. If you're gonna do something that is that incomprehensible, I kind of feel like you probably should just not have it be interactable, because at the core of it, I imagine if you're going to let me interact with something, I need to understand the nature of the reality that I'm interacting with. And if you're actively trying to make it so I don't understand the nature of the reality, then how am I supposed to possibly properly interact with something? See, I was thinking maybe the visuals were supposed to line up here. I was half thinking that maybe there was even going to be a platform that we walked out on. And we are back to the same old problem, where we need the lighting to shift. Let's just look this way and look up and down and see if there's actually something in the elevator. You would almost think that the fuzziness that you get visually from this monitor might indicate an area of safety that wouldn't have a puzzle in it. If anything, I'm guessing maybe if I can hear the audio, that tells me I'm in the wrong place. There it was hidden the whole time.
But surely the real question is, who are you, Elvin Green? I sense a sort of split in your personality, like a transversal communication. Of course, some of the symptoms are clear enough for a straightforward diagnosis. Schizophrenia, agoraphobia, paranoia. But I perceive another presence, as if your psyche was spun from a host of malignant forces.
Interesting. Maybe he's just screwing with you. And see, this is just like a bar that's been smashed up. Instead of a police station. And now, clearly, we have our symbol. So the game was really a little premature in playing the sound and indicating we'd done all the puzzles. And it definitely feels like it would have been helpful if there was a compass or something to point you in one area first. That way you don't try and solve this puzzle before it can actually be solved. I'd say this symbol, that's good enough, I really haven't lined it up well enough, indicates to me that the symbol we're seeing is a 0 that is perhaps some tangential larger world touching upon the 3 worlds we're seeing. Of course, that gets thrown out the window if we start to see a 4th reality. And then, what does that really mean? Kind of nothing. I got an achievement for finishing chapter 2 of what I assume is a 3-chapter story. Now we're loading into the Martian sci-fi futuristic world. These are all the types of worlds you would write novels about in the 1970s or so. there is certainly an expansion on people's creativity a little bit as we made more and more derivative art based on ideas that were more groundbreaking in the old days. Yep. You can easily see the difference between like Star Trek, the Next Generation stories, the good stories from Star Trek, the Next Generation, and what could be depicted and what could be written versus the more limited level of creativity that could be depicted in Star Trek, the original series. And to a certain point, the concept of even alternate realities is a concept that really wouldn't have been easily understood or embraced 50 to 100 years ago. We've told a lot of stories to that point where you have entire Spider-Man multiverses and Marvel multiverses, and it's pretty much assumed that any large universe could have a multiverse element to it. So we're back to typing. Commander Green's journal, log date 2/12/1045 AM. What would AM stand for? After Mars? So this again feels like it's far in the future. Not in the past. It is the Martian year 1045, and I am on the verge of completing my great book. The Earth is now just a field of ruins, and hundreds of millions of kilometers away from it, our silent red planet is the cradle of a postmodern creation story, a story of which I'm writing the first pages. I, Elvin Green, interesting it beeps now, have created the new being, the new being, which has turned against the human. So maybe that is the zero we're seeing. Species. This new being has reduced the human species to slavery. Whoops. So I guess this world's not any better. In order to achieve its own destiny. It's way too much typing. To embrace the universe and its multiple worlds. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't get a knock on the door this time, because there are no humans other than me. And yeah, this may be just explaining the entire story of what happened. My keyboard and my fingers are a little bit more warmed up, so I'm typing a little bit faster here, but this is a lot of typing, and I really wouldn't be surprised if there's a significant percentage of reviewers who reviewed this game on Steam negatively just because they so violently hate typing. Humans obsessed with the search for meaning have long considered themselves. And yes, I do know I sound like an idiot. speaking this way. The center of the great everything. Yeah, it's also still weird that you're not doing spaces and you're not doing punctuation, you're not shifting the capitalized things. Yet they are nothing. And you can mistype with no penalty, so you can actually just smash your face on the keyboard if you really needed to. They're nothing more than the biological residue whose memory. Let's see, let's just try this. Yeah. If you just... Interesting beeping sound, sounds like a bomb. Yeah, you could just scratch your fingers across all the keys over and over again and type this way. Yet they are nothing more than the biological residue whose memory will be lost in space. Cold and indifferent. Period. Altruistic intelligence.
Good morning, Father. Mars is basking in the rays of a most beautiful sunrise. The MMC share value is at an all-time high, and your portfolio is up to $200 septillion and 8 cents. Furthermore, the consortium has just signed 3 new Sirius 5 mining contracts. The Great Chamberlain is waiting for you in the Alpha Zone to discuss the inauguration of the Commander's Museum.
So in this case, instead of a biological child, Alice, as a robot, is a program. AL for altruistic, I for intelligence, C for coding, and then E for entity, which, yeah, that is a stretched initialism there. And we're already seeing visual glitches, which are either the game screwing up or just an indication that we once again are going to leave. Mars Mining Corp maybe is what MMC stands for. So we'll want to see what's the deal with Thea. In this story, is she going to actually be with you? Because you've been separated by her from her twice now. This may just be the good ending. See, here's a TV, but it's not ready to start, which is a smart move. We can see everything's in this reddish tone of Mars, which, yeah, definitely makes sense. What I thought was an ice cream cone seems to actually be a giant drill, and this is a domed city. Looks like we've got some people down there. Now, what was I typing the truth, or was what I was typing just a sci-fi story in a sci-fi world? Yeah, we may very well quickly find ourselves in trouble as Alice decides to destroy reality. Starmen. What does that say? WWP? Can't read the bottom part here. Something Worlds Publishing. Seems to me like there are sleeping pods here for 2. And there potentially is an indication Thea is still around. But yeah, no biological child, obviously, if you have a robot Alice. In a lot of ways, it does kind of feel like it gets back to the asset flip thing, as far as, can we just place the very similar assets in 3 different places in the exact same level, in the exact same building, and that be considered good enough? The door here is missing in this world. And actually we are much higher than where we were before. So maybe that opens up for a lower part of the world. Can't just jump off the edge. This probably means also that the elevator is going to force us to have specific conversations with specific people. Although this may just be a lot of set decoration, it may very well be a case that we can only go so far in one direction before we hit that invisible wall again. Yep. A little bit further, it seems like we can go, but then the whole gas station is totally missing here. The Rolling Dice Diner is still here, but the parking lot seems to be really just turned into these trees, and I see a building over there that may be new. The police station seems to be gone. The publishing office seems to be here, but the music section seems to be gone. Let's see what our landlord, very weird
Greetings,
design.
Master Green. Mr. Briskin is putting the final touches to the Commander's Museum. The Gleamoon has just confirmed it will attend the inauguration, and thanks you kindly. Ambassador Vogue apologizes, but he cannot be at the ceremony. He suggests attending via telepathy. This day will leave its mark on the solar system. Glory be to the great book.
So this isn't the lady. I thought this would be the landlord lady. This is some kind of robot. And yeah, I'm not sure there's any human life actually here. Let's see what this is all about.
Commander, we have just captured this Bio-H. A miner has never infiltrated the dome before. We must consider this intrusion as a major security breach.
Elvin Green, you're nothing but a demiurge trading with mechanical demons. Damn the man who betrays his human brothers and entrusts machines with his destiny. Your androids shall be powerless to stop us. It is time for the Great Revolt.
These are merely psychotic projections, Master. The human spirit is so imperfect. We'll interrogate him. He'll tell us if he's alone.
So, these are androids. This is a human. There is still some humans and potentially a revolt going on. The beginnings of a revolt. Like, clearly I'm the bad guy in the story here. And in fact, I've been depicted in the 3 different worlds as being a bad guy. One being selfish and drunk and high and incapable of being creative or contributing to society, which you'll have to make your own decisions on whether human beings are bad because they don't contribute to society or don't contribute enough. But then in the second one, I'm being depicted as the bad guy because I'm colluding and staying within a evil, corrupt system, and being encouraged, and probably would testify against my own wife to the point of her being executed even if my own decisions or statement wouldn't really have affected whether she was executed or not. And then this time I have straight up created an artificial intelligence. It's weird if you're destroying humanity, though, that you would have so many toilets and so many sinks. Again, asset flipping things you've already made maybe logically doesn't make as much sense in a world that is full of androids. In fact, tables in general don't make sense unless this has all been designed before the androids took over and started eliminating humans, which is somewhat believable, or this has all been designed exclusively for the benefit of me. There's a severe level of narcissism, I imagine, here, in that a writer thinks he could affect any of the worlds this much. But that is pretty commonplace, I think, for writers, is that because they can, in their minds, create worlds, they think that their writings would affect society and change societies at a rapid speed, which it's just not the case, really. Yeah. If anything, I would say once some books became very popular, it just became really more difficult for other authors to be heard. Harry Potter is probably a perfect example of that, in that I think, critically speaking, you could say the Harry Potter book series is pretty rough at the beginning and good overall, but not really a great story. But it's certainly the fandom and the hype around Harry Potter only made it less likely for kids who are unlikely to want to read that much at all in the first place, and they're not going to go out and seek any other Harry Potter style stories to compete or even as a comparison or addendum of Harry Potter. And so fantasy magical stories, which once would have been the realms of Lord of the Rings and maybe the Chronicles of Narnia, were just replaced with Harry Potter and nothing else. The only creative parody of Harry Potter is probably The Magicians, but that's almost a counter statement to
Master,
Harry Potter,
your
and it's
attire
for
is sublime.
older people.
That brown Schweid's toga is simply stunning. You're looking younger by the day. What's your secret? No entry allowed. Not everything is ready yet for your museum's inauguration. Please be patient. I promise it will be amazing.
Okay.
Father, excuse the interruption. You've received an ultra-level security flashcom. Asymmetrical decryption complete.
So we're getting a pop-up message here. To Commander Green from the MMC console. Great Commander, according to our security department, the consortium has just lost control of the Serenius Tholium mine site. The female Thea Trauberg and several Bio-H were spotted near the dome. So once again, she is fighting on a terrorist group. It almost implies that what you're supposed to take from these two alternate realities from the first reality would be maybe she's a terrorist in the first reality too, and you just didn't figure it out. Or maybe the two alternate realities are the writer of the story making her a terrorist because he's mad she left him. The Great Council of the MMC is specifically asking you to speed up the process of replacing human workers with the new generation synths before the rebellion takes over all Martian sites. I've already ordered Phalange Psi to move into the dome and intercept the female Trauberg, as well as her accomplices. He will terminate their cycle. So there just is not a version of this world. See, that's changing things now. Time has moved forward. It's just not a version of this world that we see where Thorberg is not in
These
trouble.
bio-H's will do anything for their Martian god. It's as if they had been brainwashed. What does the great book prophesy, Commander? Isn't our mission to exterminate them?
It's hard for an android or anything robotic to talk on the terms of brainwashing. Interesting. Seems pretty obvious you could just walk here, and yet it's not letting me. But yeah, you can't talk brainwashing when you're inherently programmed yourself to think a certain way. Okay, well, I guess we'll go to the museum and see if there's anything here of importance.
These humans spread their foul stench throughout the entire zone. They live like animals and dare to rise up against us. And now these savages wish to destroy our magnificent museum. It's a sacrilege, Master. A sacrilege.
It is really funny that they're speaking basically in religious terms around you. Which, yeah, that screams a level of ego in how you would program a computer or an android. There's just a lot of slow walking here. You see it a lot in video games. You see it way too often, where there's, looks like we can finally find the puzzles. Just a lot of slow-paced walking. I fairly recently played a game called Dear Esther Landmark Edition, which is just a remaster of a remake of a mod. And it is about the slowest walking I have ever seen in a video game for no good reason, other than to stretch out what could have been a 40-minute experience into a hour and a half.
I'm receiving more and more flash comms about the violence caused by humans on the MMC sites. Some fanatics have even managed to penetrate the dome. The Phalange C is keeping me informed of the situation. But we won't let these humans spoil such a fine day. If I may be so bold, Master, why don't we rid ourselves of this degenerate species?
This is very early sci-fi exoticism, I would say. You can see there's definitely an Asian influence on these androids, in that, yeah, Asian exoticism would be another thing you would do in storytelling. Certainly, is that you would take cultures that are not your standard United States culture and consider that weird and bizarre, and then instead of really trying to understand it at any level, you would just use it to tell a story. Whereas I'd say better fiction writing is to think, why would the Great Chamberlain be dressed like a Japanese geisha, for lack of a better description? And if you can write an interesting backstory towards it, and then try to integrate that backstory into your storytelling, then you can pull off that trick. But if there is no logical reason for, say, these Greek goddess statues to be here, then, or these Greek statues in general to be here, then they shouldn't be here. And arguably, I'd say they shouldn't be here, even if you are trying to imply that the main character has an ego. Why would he share that ego with human statues when he seems to have a complete willingness to betray human? It is questionable why the androids even are androids and have human forms in the first place, or why you would have Alice as a name for the computer in the first place. Okay, well, now that we've started this, there is this black element here in the corners telling me that I can look for things. These books feel like they don't have any printing on them, that they're digital objects designed to look like books, but they really aren't. So we have to hit that, to hit that, to hit that. It looks to me like your alternate realities are completely falling apart in a fourth dimension. Yep. I don't think we have much more we can take from that, other than, yep, the world in this last attempt just is going to fall into complete madness. Because I'd assume this is a case where no matter what world you try to create and what world you write, you cannot find happiness. You cannot create happiness. Because happiness doesn't come about from fiction stories. It comes about from putting in more effort, I would imagine, is the message they're trying to say, and that him writing these fictional stories has inevitably led him to neglect Thea and probably Alice. The sleeper pod here is closed now, if Alice really does exist. That's another thing about sci-fi, is at a certain level, and this is probably for movie and TV production, a great lesson to learn. A broom can just be a broom. It doesn't inherently have to have glowing aspects or LEDs attached to it, unless there's a real reason for that, and that would be the question, certainly, as to what would be the reason that a broom needs LEDs and lights on it. This time, the world is bringing back the blue section, whereas this looks like a new area, and couldn't even really tell you this isn't just a collusion of red and blue as a section. yeah, I really don't suspect that there's that much more of a story here, though. I think we're just going to be presented these worlds and then left to derive whatever form of meaning we can from it by ourselves. Which, while people, even I, may on occasion complain about stories just banging you over the head with a meaning and a theme, I think that works fairly well more often than it doesn't. It's not until I've seen some of the, like, oh, you're afraid of the dark type horror and sci-fi stories where they really just bang on the theme way too much that I start to get annoyed on that. I would say some of those sci-fi things for teenagers, for kids, often feel like they are slightly better. They're not, they don't have the same budget, obviously, but they seem to be, by addressing a smaller, younger audience, sometimes capable of telling a slightly different story. There's at least a couple of them that are particularly built around like technology and cell phones and things like that. Things that would help in sci-fi if you're understanding the problems of, say, getting caught up in a video game and playing for your entire life, or whereas that concept is harder to sell to an older generation that potentially doesn't play video games. I am uncertain what is triggering this symbol, but I got it.
Ruling over Mars like a Roman emperor. Who could have imagined such a destiny, huh? But this world is not enough for you. You are preparing to manipulate the layers of space-time as if you were playing dice. Oh, you are a fascinating case of insatiable ambition, my friend.
Is everything all right, Father? A severe disruption has just affected your electrosensorial field. It's a very strange phenomenon, an intrusion from an unknown source.
So, we'll end on that, I guess. You have Alice effectively saying, hey, don't do this. You'll be abandoning this world. You'll be abandoning me if you continue to play the game. Unfortunately, for an interactive experience and for a video game, you can only really, as an Easter egg, as a joke, suggest that the player of the game stop playing. You can't actually have the player ever think and realize that the move actually is to stop playing, because that is just not really believable that a player would do that. Yep. I Ching, another example there of exoticism, Asian fascination. And it is all very much a fictionalized Asian fantasization, because when you're talking 60s and 70s depictions of Asians, it is not really bothering to learn the realities of their cultures. Yep. Well, that was another hour. It seems to me like there's a decent chance that the next episode will be the last. There's always a decent chance, too, that I will play for an hour in the next episode and then try and push it towards wrapping up and getting to the credits, and then find that there's another whole hour's worth of content after the next hours or more, and then it would just go on way too long. So I'll try to avoid that. Yeah, there's just not really a lot of dialogue here. And inherently, I just don't know how you make a game like this, because it feels like what you should do is that there should be more than even the length of a short story worth of narration and level description, a potential complete desertion of the idea of show don't tell, and just have the game tell what you're seeing and describe it in great detail. The problem with doing that, though, is if you are showing and telling at the same time, inherently either the showing or the telling will be better. And so if it described the roads as a perfect crimson road that stretched on for 1,000 miles, well, you look at this road, it's obviously not 1,000 miles. But there is almost certainly a balance here where more description, more narration would be helpful. That would be something along the lines of like Alan Wake, the first Alan Wake game, where the story was being told by a narrator as you were actually playing through it. Alan Wake pulled that off mostly by having narration, then having action sequences where the narration stopped, and so you were then focused on the action sequences, then having narration. The visuals in Alan Wake weren't particularly as big of an issue, since what was being described was more of what was happening more than what you were seeing. But yeah, definitely in this case, there's room for more dialogue, more narration. This is a weird story to tell when it's all about an author and all about a narrator, and then there's no real story here. It is just themes that are getting repeated in a very short context of a few lines of dialogue being told to us by a few people. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.